Okay, I think we could begin. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abid Patwa from the Office of High Energy Physics, HEP, here in the DOE's Office of Science. I'm the program manager for the Energy Frontier program, and on behalf of DOE, I would like to welcome all of you to this informational webinar on the FY 2024 funding opportunities for high energy physics research, or what we, for those who are familiar, we normally call the annual HEP University Comparative Review process. This is the FOA that's listed here on the screen. It's the following number DE-FOA-0003177. I'm also joined by Bill Kilgore in our HEP office, who is the HEP Theory Program Manager, as well as the program official for the University Comparative Review process in HEP. And momentarily, we'll also be joined by Glenn Crawford, who is the director for the Research and Technology Division in DOE's Office of High Energy Physics. So before we begin, I have a few logistics to go over with all of you. This is mainly regarding Zoom. This meeting is being recorded. The recording of this meeting will also be posted to the HEP website sometime next week. The slides that are being presented today will also be posted on the website later today. There's also a closed caption that is available, and if you would like to access that, please click on the closed caption button to get that going. After the presentation, there will be this question and answer session, so please use the Q&A box in Zoom to ask your question. You may be able to use that also, and if we throughout the meeting, and if we could answer that as from our end as we go. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bill Kilgore in our office, and he could begin this afternoon's presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Abid. As Abid has told you, this is a discussion of the funding, high energy physics research funding opportunities, which we know as the HEP comparative review. And I'll discuss what's going on with this. So this slide is particularly apt for those who have applied in the past and are familiar with our program. This year, the comparative review will be done through the FOA that's known as the Office of Science Open Call. Office of Science abbreviates itself as SC. So if you see the term SC anywhere in my slides, it refers to the Office of Science. So in FY 2024, high energy physics will continue to prioritize support for university research program through the process of comparative review, but we will execute this process through this Office of Science Open Call FOA 3177. Right? There will be no dedicated HEP comparative review FOA in 2024, unlike the last dozen years or so. We're doing it through a more general funding call. So fitting into this open call necessitates some changes in the structure of the comparative review applications, and I will discuss how that works. But we have tried as much as possible to keep the process the same as it has been in past years. So this is the FOA in question. The official name is the elegant title of FY 2024, Continuation of Solicitation for the Office of Science Financial Assistance Program, commonly called either the General Solicitation or the Open Call. I will try to stick to Open Call in this talk. It's released annually at the start of each fiscal year. It is open all year, but we are using it to run a comparative review in which we accept proposals at a given period of time, and we review them and compare the results of the review in order to prioritize our funding. So this process of comparative review was, this is the 13th round of it. We first started in 2013. It started from a 2012 or 2010 committee of visitors. This is a HEPAP subpanel that reviews the operations of the Office of High Energy Physics and makes recommendations on how we can improve our performance. And so they wanted us to move to this process of comparative review, and they have reiterated that recommendation over the years. The overall goal of comparative review is to improve the overall quality and efficacy of the HEP research program by identifying the best proposals with the highest scientific impact and potential. Okay, so with a few tweaks, this is the same process we've been using for more than a dozen years now. So a big feature of this the central feature of comparative review is that we have sub-program panels. So it's we have a review process. We send proposals out for review. We receive back written reviews, and then each of the research sub-panels in HEP convenes, or research programs in HEP convenes a panel to discuss the proposals we've received and their reviews, and to make recommendations of priorities. Okay, this is a very competitive process, and it leads to hard choices that must be made on the basis of the quality of the reviews and our available funding. Okay, as it is a comparative process, some proposals will be at the top and others will be at the bottom. That's just the way that works. It's understood that the vast majority of proposals are reflect strong effort in HEP, but due to the rankings and comments by the reviewers and our constrained budgets, some of the people whose research and level of effort are ranked lower in terms of priority and impact will be either funded less or will not be funded. Does not mean you cannot continue working on your experiment or your theoretical efforts, but they're not being funded by a grant to do it. Okay, so this is why it's imperative to respond to this FOA and to detail each person involved, the efforts of each person involved. Okay, so members of sub-panel programs see all the proposals, and each member provides inputs and ranks relative to the others. When panel members are faced with comparing efforts, impacts, and limited budgets, rather than rank the whole proposal low, they may provide guidance regarding which aspects of the proposal were stronger or weaker. So that is the basic process, and the reason why we do this to run our support our determined support for our university program. A few comments about the differences between running a dedicated FOA, as we have in the past, and using the SC Open Call, as we will this year. The SC Open Call serves all SC programs and all types of proposals. So Section 4 of a FOA, which is in all FOAs, is the application and submission information, contains information about what must be included in an application for financial assistance. In the Open Call, this section is very general because it serves not just research proposals, but conference proposals and experimental operations proposals and supplemental proposals and various other sorts of proposals, which we were able to exclude when we had a dedicated call. But each program within the Office of Science has its own subsection of Section 1, the funding opportunity description, in which it describes the research scope and types of proposals it is willing to receive through the open call. And in that section, in the section dedicated for high energy physics, we accept many types of proposals, and I'll talk a bit more later, but we also specify the rules under which we will accept proposals into the comparative review. So read this section, Section 1, subsection 5 on high energy physics very carefully, as it will tell you the information you need to know to submit a proposal for the comparative review. Say that because this is the open call, research proposals that are not accepted into comparative review will still be reviewed if they are responsive to the HEP research scope. But they may, since they are not in the comparative review, they may have lower priority for funding. So for proposals intended for the 2024 HEP comparative review, we request that pre-applications are submitted by November 1st, 2023. That's less than 2 weeks away. Pre-applications are submitted through PAMS. For some reason, PAMS calls them pre-proposals, so as always refer to them as pre-applications. But the principal investigator submits these. These are optional, but we strongly recommend them. They're very helpful to us in that they tell us who is going to be sending in a proposal or intends to put in a proposal and on what topics they will be working. And so it helps us to plan for this large review and arrange for panelists who cover the full range of material that will be submitted in these proposals. So though we recommend that or request that it come in by November 1st, we will accept late submissions of pre-applications. But the later they are, the less valuable they are, and that they will have diminishing impact on our ability to choose appropriate reviewers. The full proposals are due by December 1st, 2023. If you read the FOA carefully, it says proposals are due before December 1st, but we will give full consideration to proposals submitted on December 1st. Proposals must be submitted through grants.gov by your university-sponsored research office or sponsored program office, and you please coordinate with this office at your university to plan the submission. Just a note on this deadline, we are open to making reasonable accommodations for late or defective applications, but HEP will be the arbiter of what is considered reasonable. So if your submission will be delayed, or if you find a mistake in your proposal that you want to fix, contact your program manager immediately or as soon as you possibly can, and we can arrange for a resubmission. However, if it's delayed too long, such that it would disrupt the process of review. So if you wait a month or more and the review has already started, then we will probably not accept you into the comparative review. But as I say, we will be the deciders of what is and is not reasonable. But so contact us as soon as you're aware of a problem. For those applicants submitting renewal proposals, you're required to submit what are called renewal proposal products, which is the products of the last round of your award, primarily publications, but if there are patent applications or anything of that sort, those would also count as products. It's the part of the annual progress report that is known as products. That is what is to be submitted. So proposals that are submitted to grants.gov then get transferred over to DOE and assigned to program managers. Once a proposal has been assigned to a program manager in PAMS will send out an email requesting renewal proposal products. You cannot submit the RPP until it is requested. Some people want to get ahead of the game and get it done, but you can't do it until the proposal is in and this automatic request has been generated. Renewal proposals cannot be sent out for review until the renewal proposal products have been submitted. So if it tells you, it asks you to submit it within a week. If you miss that deadline, nothing will happen. And nothing will happen in the sense that we cannot send the proposal out for review, but also that you will not be punished other than that your proposal will not go up for review. And if you delay too long, then again, you've missed the coordinating with all the other proposals getting reviewed, and you risk not being included in the comparative review. So if you're submitting a renewal, look for this request from PAMS. If you don't see it, ask someone. Occasionally there are mistakes on PAM's side, but not many. So be looking for this and try to submit it before the middle of December. So the eligibility and scope of this for the comparative review, as I say, this FOA 3177 is used by all offices within the Office of Science, and the general rules apply for all applications. HEP will accept proposals from all sources. This is to this FOA, not necessarily to comparative review. We will accept proposals from all sources, except for non-profit organizations that engage in lobbying activities, and we will not accept proposals from national laboratories, DOE or NNSA run national laboratories. They may be subrecipients of an award submitted by another organization or proposed by another organization, but they cannot submit proposals themselves. In this FOA, we not only accept new and renewal proposals for HEP research, but we also accept proposals in support of HEP research programs for supplemental support for research activities, for conferences, for experimental operations, for conceptual R&D, and perhaps even design and fabrication directed for a specific project within the program. New and renewal proposals for HEP research within specified subprograms are eligible for the HEP comparative review, which is really the focus of my talk today. And they will receive full consideration for the comparative review if submitted by December 1st. Other proposals, as I say, will be considered for support, but may not be in the comparative review. So high energy physics research is divided into 8 sub-programs. I will not read through them, except to note that, well, they have the experimental frontiers with theoretical physics, as well as R&D, technology R&D for accelerator science and detector development. 2 other sub-programs, computational high energy physics and the quantum information science for high energy physics, are not participating in the comparative review. So you may submit proposals on these topics to the SC open call, but they will not be in the comparative. They will not be accepted in the comparative review, and it would be best to not you should not submit them as part of a proposal that hopes to where other sub-programs are supposed to be in the comparative review. So it should be a separate submission. So proposed research will review best if it's closely aligned with the DOE HEP mission and its program. And important to emphasize, in this funding cycle, HEP priorities are still aligned with the 2014 P5 plan. We are all anxiously awaiting the new P5 plan, but that is not going to come until probably in December, and it will take a while for that to get accepted and implemented into our research plan. So this year, we are still aligned with the 2014 P5 plan. Okay, investigators in the experimental frontiers will review best if they're closely integrated with HEP-supported experimental collaborations in which they have key roles and responsibilities. Generic research that is not to be carried out as part of a specific HEP experimental collaboration should be directed to either to HEP theory or the detector R&D programs as appropriate. All other work or especially experimental work should be aligned with an ongoing HEP-supported experiment. Okay, always read the FOA carefully to see and follow the requirements in the text. Non-compliant proposals submitted to the FOA will not be reviewed. Okay, now we will let you know that this is non-compliant, and there will be we will try to give you an opportunity to resubmit, but you'll have to be able to turn things around fast if you want to make it back into the comparative review. Nonetheless, we will review resubmissions if the resubmission is compliant. So in recent years, about 5% of incoming proposals have been declined without review. Most often missed or overlooked requirements include adherence to page limits, providing separate budget sheets if needed, collaborator lists, which is a fairly new requirement, peer plans, which started last year, and I'll say more about that as we go on later in the talk. A number of years ago, we started requiring digital data management plans and to exclude personally identifiable information. That message seems to have been received, and we have many fewer problems in these areas. Nonetheless, read the FOA and adhere to the rules on these topics, as well as these newer or more easily missed requirements up here. During and prior to submission, work with your sponsored research office to make sure that all the FOA requirements are met. So what is supported? We support efforts that are in direct support of DOE HEP programs. Support depends on the merit review process, programmatic factors, and available funds. We support research efforts, mainly the science on R&D, experimental design, data taking, and analysis related activities. There may be some engineering support provided through the detector R&D subprogram, but primarily that would be more likely to come through operations and so not be open to the comparative review. Theory, a broad range of theory and computational studies as well. Faculty support and research scientists. What we don't support by research grants are, any significant experimental operations or project that is construction related activities, such as engineering, major items of equipment, Also, we don't do non-HEP related efforts, especially particularly experiments that are not part of the HEP portfolio. For example, experimental work on gravity waves. LIGO is a fabulous experiment, but it's entirely an NSF experiment, and we will not support experimental research on LIGO. Heavy ions at RIC or the LHC are, again, that's the Office of Nuclear Physics. We will not support experimental efforts in these areas. You should connect the narrative to the or if you are engaged in research that is connected to national research initiatives, you should make this connection clear in your narrative. So a significant amount of our funding in recent years, especially research funding, has come through congressional, administration, or agency initiatives. So the current initiatives that we are working with include the quantum information science, artificial intelligence and machine learning, advanced computing, and microelectronics. Okay, so AI/ML has had a significant impact across the entire HEP research program. QIS is becoming a more and more common research tool for parts of the program, particularly theory and detector development programs. Microelectronics is primarily relevant to the detector development program. Of course, advanced computing affects all of high energy physics. You're advised to clearly identify those components of your proposal or your proposed research that may connect to initiative funding. Okay, so when discussing this, you should consider having a separate section in which you discuss how it connects to the initiative, who will be involved in doing the work, what the qualifications of the personnel involved doing the work are, and treat it as an actual part of your, call it out as a particular part of your research program, and don't expect that it will just, that everyone will know what you're doing. So you should distinguish initiative-related scope as being proposed. You should make sure to distinguish initiative-related research scope being proposed from that supported by other federal research grants, if you have any, either through the quantized program, that's the HEP QIS research, a dedicated AI/ML FOA, or dedicated microelectronics FOA. Okay, particular comments about quantum information science is that research that has been funded through the quantized program should remain associated with the quantized program and should not be included in your comparative review proposal. A dedicated HEP QIS FOA may, depending on appropriations, be released later in 2024. Renewal proposals for quantized awards that do not have current FY 2024 funding should be submitted to this same FOA, but will not be part of the comparative review. New research scope in QIS can be included in comparative review proposals to this FOA in either the HEP theory or the detector R&D program areas. This, particularly quantum information science to extend the reach of HEP theory and development of quantum information science-derived detection techniques for HEP experiments. Please contact your program manager identified in the FOA before proposing QIS-related research scope. Comments about artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's really ubiquitous in the experimental program and becoming more and more common in the theoretical program as well. There's typically two types. There's developer, where you're developing new techniques and applying them to HEP research, or they're simply using tools that have been developed either outside or within your collaboration and applying it to a data analysis. Both are useful and can kind of draw good reviews. Oftentimes, developers have a bit of an edge when it comes to comparative reviews. So the FOA encourages investigators to identify, as I said before, for all of the initiatives, but call out your group's AI/ML efforts as you would any other key areas of expertise. Okay. And again, generic AI/ML research should be proposed to the computational HEP subprogram, but will not be part of the FY 2024 HEP comparative review process. A note on pre-applications or pre-proposals. In the past, we required letters of intent. PAMS has both letters of intent, permits both letters of intent and pre-applications. The open call permits pre-applications only. So it's like the letters of intent we used to request, but it has a different name. As I said earlier, they're not required, but we do ask that you submit them so that we can, to help us plan for the reviewers. A note that PAMS allows you to attach additional documents to a pre-proposal, and we ask that you please attach the collaborator template, which is available. There's a link in the FOA, and that you attach it as an Excel document. I'll discuss more about the collaborator template shortly. Proposals submitted to the, well, actually, this applies to all proposals, particularly comparative review proposals submitted to this FOA will be subjected to the following merit review criteria. The first four have been long applied to, or in fact, they're established by statutes. They have applied to Office of Science proposals forever. Scientific merit and scientific and technical merit, appropriateness of the method, competence of the applicants, and reasonableness of the budget. Last year, a new requirement was added for all Office of Science proposals on the quality and efficacy of promoting inclusive and equitable research plans with your proposal. So I will say a bit more about that. As I say, from starting last year, a new merit criterion. The reviewers are asked to respond to or prompted with the following questions. It's not a checkbox that you have to answer every one of them, but these are among the questions that they should be asking about your peer plan. Is the proposed research plan suitable for the size and complexity of the research project? To what extent is this plan likely to lead to participation of individuals from diverse backgrounds? What aspects of the peer plan are likely to contribute to the goal of creating and maintaining an equitable, inclusive, encouraging, and professional training and research environment, and supporting a sense of belonging among project personnel? And how does the proposed plan include intentional mentorship, and are the associated mentoring resources reasonable and appropriate? Okay, so there is a link on the Office of Science web pages about peer plans. It has a great deal of information. It has frequently asked questions. It has a recording of a webinar given last fall by the director of the developer of the peer plans about the objectives of the program. And so there's a lot of good information there. I'll say a few more comments about what should go into a peer plan. That they should describe the activities and strategies proposed by the principal investigator and project team to promote equity and inclusion, such that it is integral to the research project. They are limited to 3 pages, which for a large group of applicants is quite small, but 3 pages is in fact the limit, and it should be included as an appendix. There's a special appendix set aside named in the FOA for peer plans. It will be evaluated as part of the merit review process and used to inform funding decisions. And it is required of all research proposals submitted to the Office of Science through funding opportunity announcements, laboratory announcements, invitational proposals, and invited proposals from DOE labs. Okay, now our experience with it is, and a lot of misunderstanding, is that peer is not meant to be a general purpose exercise in diversity, equity, and inclusion, nor does it ask for participation in unrelated outreach efforts. A peer plan should describe how inclusivity and equity are expressed in the research being proposed, and how senior investigators on the proposal will be involved in that effort. It can leverage institutional DEI plans and resources, but it is not enough to simply describe those programs and resources. It must discuss how they are to be implemented in the proposed research. So please look at, again, this is that same link I showed before. Please look at there's a great deal of information there. And so this is, again, recaps what I've just said. But so now I'm going to discuss some of the changes or new features for even for returning applicants that you'll have to fill out when you send a proposal. Each proposal must have fill out a form called a senior key person profile. The profile must be filled out by each senior key person. Now, what is a senior key person? It's the PI and all persons named, identified by name in Section A of the budget. And when you get the budget sheet, so you list senior investigators in Section A, grad students and postdocs and such are listed in a different section of the budget, and they are not included as senior key persons. But so in this senior key person profile, you identify, your name and identify, but also this is where you will attach a biographical sketch. There's a place where you add an attachment and your current and pending. So it's rather different than past applications where we had appendices set aside for including bio sketches or current and pending reports. There have been some changes in the format of the bio sketch and current and pending. The Office of Science requires the use of NSF format in the Science CV system or fillable PDF forms available from NSF, both for bio sketches and for declarations of current and pending support. Please note, though the Office of Science requires the NSF format is not fully compatible with the requests for information in the FOA. We've been promised a Office of Science-based format for a number of years, but it's not yet available. So we're continuing to lean on the NSF, the available NSF format. If you cannot find a way to fit the required information onto the NSF template, then you may generate, put the information on an extra page and append it to the to what comes out of the NSF format. Note again, for past applicants, the collaborator list is no longer part of the bio sketch. I'll talk about the collaborator list a little more later on. Both documents, as I showed here, are to be attached to the senior key person profile. HEP recommends using the Science CV system over the fillable PDF. There's links to the Science CV system in the FOA. We have seen software incompatibilities between merging fillable PDFs with other proposal documents. Sometimes the information in the fillable PDF gets hidden and it appears to be blank when in fact you actually did write things in. So it's I recommend using the system and generating actual the documents yourself. It is anticipated that the Office of Science will participate in a multi-agency effort to develop a common Science CV biosketch format and CMP format in future FOAs, and you will already be in the Science CV system, so it's good to get ready for that. It connects to the ORCID system, which many people use to curate their CVs, and so it's easy to list your top 10 publications or things of that sort that are requested. One final note is that, in particular, the fillable PDF for current and pending pages has a very large number of entries. It allows you to, it just goes on for pages and pages. Please delete unused pages. There are some proposals that come in that are more than half of it is empty pages from current and pending. All right, there's just no benefit to making program managers and reviewers scroll through dozens of empty pages looking for content. So please delete unused pages if you feel you must use the fillable PDF. For recent years, we have asked that all foreign government-sponsored talent recruitment programs be identified in the current and pending support. Details of obligations otherwise must be provided on request, right? You just need to acknowledge that you participate. Details may be requested later. I'm not aware of whether or not this has happened to any of our applicants, but it is a possibility. Please refer to the FOA for full details. So this, known as a collaborator list, it is referred to in the FOA as identification of merit review conflicts, or the list of individuals who should not serve as reviewers. The Office of Science provides a collaborator template as an Excel spreadsheet. Please submit one document containing all entries for all senior key persons. The file should not be part of the narrative document. There is a specific place in the FOA application, or sorry, in the application materials to attach this this list. For those, you can find the detail right here. Your application is considered incomplete without this document. This is the same document I said we request that you submit it with your pre-application. You need to submit it again with the proposal. It is, as I say, your proposal is, or your application is incomplete without it and subject to declination without review. Okay, this document will not be sent out for review. It is for the use of program officers. It helps us to arrange a set of reviewers who will and try to avoid conflict of interest in that set of reviewers, right? It is vastly preferred that you use the Excel, that you submit the template as an Excel file. That allows us to do cross-referencing within Excel and makes it much easier to implement the information and make use of the information provided on the template. Converting it to PDF or other spreadsheet formats or your own homebrew format in tech make it much harder for us to work with. So please use the Excel, fill out the Excel file template and submit it as an Excel file. Instructions are included both in the FOA and in the template itself. And as I say, the file should also be attached to the pre-proposal. A change, the page limits have not changed. They remain 9 persons per senior investigator. But unlike past years, we do not have a complicated definition of what a senior investigator is. Instead, we allow the 9 pages for each person on each senior key person as identified in the senior key personnel profile. So as said, that encompasses anyone listed in Section A of the budget sheets. It includes research scientists, research active professors emeritus. It does not include students and postdocs. Now, since the research scientists, bio sketches, and current pending used to be submitted to separate or as a separate appendix in the proposal, but they're now attached to the senior key person profile, so there's no need for that extra appendix. And as a warning, do not expand your available page count by enlisting phantom research scientists to take it to up that number, right? If any senior key person whose narrative does not indicate that they actually have a key role in the proposal are an invitation for us to decline without review, that you're not, you're trying to game the system in some way. So additional budget requirements. If your application includes a request support for 2 or more HEP research programs, say theory and energy frontier, or 2 different experimental frontiers, you need to submit a budget breakouts for each sub-program. So not just a total budget, but also how each sub-program will use the funds it is requesting. And there is a special form available at grants.gov for submitting this. Instructions are in the FOA, but it's this research and related sub-award budget form. And please make sure you understand how to do that. The budget forms are exactly like the main budget forms for the proposal, so it should be easy to work with. But it's a big help for us and a big help for reviewers that we can see exactly what each sub-program is asking for. It can be sometimes difficult to tease out from the main budget which students will be working, say, in the theory program, which students will be working in the experimental program. So this is a requirement for multitask proposals. So I'll come to my summary. The Office of High Energy Physics will be holding a comparative review panels in selected sub-programs to prioritize FY 2024 funding for research proposals through the Office of Science open call. Research proposals submitted by December 1st, 2023 will be considered for this comparative review process. as detailed, if with proper preparation, perhaps even later, but that requires us to understand why you might be late. Details and instructions can be found in the FOA. Contact information of program managers is also available in the FOA. And the FOA itself and other funding opportunities can be found on the HEP website under the funding opportunities page. And these slides that I presented today, as well as a recording of this presentation, will also be available next to this FOA on our funding opportunities page. Now, it's about time to stop and take questions. I will note that this document, including the extra slides, will be available, and the extra slides have recommendations, particularly for new applicants, on effective proposal writing. So there's some good advice in those of how to write a proposal that will reach the desired audience and make the right impression on, or present your material in the best possible light. So I encourage you to read through that, if particularly if you're a new applicant. So with that, I will stop my presentation, and we will start answering some of the questions from the Q&A session. So let me stop sharing.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, so we do have some questions more on some of the forms and the format of these. So let me go through there a few on the NSF BioSketch. So what aspects for the NSF size format is not compatible with the FOA requirements?
So it's kind of a detail. I think we ask for 10 recent publications that relate to the research being proposed, and the NSF format has room for 5, and then they have another block later down with 5 other publications that might be relevant. So you could split it 5 and 5. That would be just fine. Some people, for some reason, find this confusing, and they would just rather submit the list of 10 in one block and append it to the end. So that kind of information is it's not a huge discrepancy. It's just there are empty places or boxes for other information in the NSF format where you can put the information in, but some people are reluctant to do that. So
I think this is related also on the NSF sketch. What are the non-compatible requirements that need to be added in addition to the NSF sketch that you were referring to in your talk?
I don't have the NSF format right in front of me. The requirements for that DOE asks for are clearly stated in the FOA, and if it's not in the FOA, we will not hold you accountable for that information. So I would go the other way rather than trying to understand what NSF wants. Read the FOA and understand what HEP wants.
And also in the FOA, it doesn't, on the biographical sketch, it doesn't have a page limit, but the form has. So what is the page limit for the biographical sketch? If you could.
Well, there's not a hard limit in the fact that we're allowing you to append extra information with another page. If you provide only the information requested in the FOA, it is likely to come out to be 2 pages. It might go to a 3rd page. It should not be significantly longer than 3 pages, but if that's, so we don't need the full, author list from CMS or Atlas papers. We just want, just to identify which paper you're talking about. So there's no need for the BioSketch to stretch on for many pages if you only provide the information requested.
Right. And we just got one in, and I think the question was in your summary slide. You had mentioned new tips for new applicants that were mentioned. I believe these are in your backup slides, which the slides, as I think I posted it, I mentioned it earlier, it's going to be posted on our website just later today. So you will have an access to those backup slides that Bill was going through. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes.
There were a few that I did answer, and so many of you who are connected will be able to see I think there was one question, it was a very good question, is on the peer plan. So the peer proposal, the peer for the proposal is in the appendix 5. Should each tasks in these very large umbrella proposals include a section on how that task plans to execute it in the narrative, or should it remain proposal wide? And so I could say what I answered on the thing, and if you want to please add, Bill, feel free. I mentioned that in appendix 5, it's limited up to 3 pages. So the best guidance is that overall, the proposal try to describe how collectively you're working on the peer plan, but also then include how each investigator or each group on the different tasks address the peer plan for the specific activities that those tasks are doing. The other thing I also mentioned is that many are also allowed to use the pages in your proposal narrative, the 9 pages per senior or key person, and then refer to and cite appendix 5 for any additional descriptions on the peer plan. That's also available. Yeah.
Right. So I agree with what Abid said. I will note that this was a requirement that was introduced last year, and the panelists in my comparative review panel were interested in what the different PIs were doing, and they say, well, the peer plan looks good overall, but what is applicant A going to be doing? How are they going to be part of this? And so, to the degree that you can provide some granularity to it, given the very small amount of space available, it would help. It will help review the reviews and help the reviewers to understand what the plan is.
The other one that was answered in real time was, so you had mentioned, Bill, about the current and pending support to use the fillable PDF. And is there another option, such as just writing them ourselves in a compliant format? And I think the guidance is, of course, the response basically was to please do use the fillable PDF format for the current.
Actually, no, my response was that the Science EV system has a system both for biosketches and for current and pending. They're both labeled as the NSF style format. If you log into Science EV, it was developed by the NIH. The NIH-based formats are very different from what would be appropriate to high energy physics, but the NSF works fine for us. Well, with a few minor caveats. And that would be preferred because it only produces enough pages to fill what the information you put in. Whereas the fillable PDF allows, I think, 15 entries in current and pending, and another 10 entries in in-kind contributions. It just stretches on and on and on. And most of them, if you don't delete the empty pages, the bulk of your proposal can end up being empty, current and pending, which frustrates reviewers.
And then the other on the for the collaborator names towards the conflicts of interest, should we just mention senior faculty collaborators, or should we include the postdocs and student collaborators? And
well, I think you should include your collaborators, postdocs and students within the last 4 years. I didn't specify that in my talk today, but I believe the FOA does. The only exception being that a thesis advisor and student relationship is a lifetime conflict of interest. So even if someone was your student 20 or more years ago, you list that person. Even even if they're out of the field, because we find, especially with things like AI ML, people who have gone into industry might find themselves back, doing something of interest or relevant to the kind of research that now is becoming common in HEP, or at least from a technical point of view, if not a scientific point of view. So any student or any graduate student you've advised should be listed there. Postdocs are considered like collaborators, 4-year cooling off period, and you don't need to list them any longer. But
good. We went through all the questions that have come so far. If others in the last few minutes, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and we'll be happy to answer them. there are any questions on page limits on the narrative as Bill described on senior and key persons. I know you may be typing, so I will wait a few minutes. Don't see anything so far. Okay, one sec. When will decisions be made?
Yes, so we expect that the review panels will take place by March. We should be finished with review panels by March. We'll make preliminary decisions shortly after the review panels. Actual implementation will take place in April and May. We hope to have the process, at least certainly all announcements, all funding announcements, I hope would be made by May. Of course, the wild card is that we do not have an appropriation, and therefore until we actually know what money we have to spend, we're not going to be able to make clear decisions, or certainly not the full set of decisions that we would eventually like to make. So if we have our funding appropriation in hand, we will make the decisions as soon after within a couple of months of the review panels, which, as I say, I expect to take place in March.
And we got two related questions. One is if a certain investigator doesn't want a certain reviewer, how does that get communicated? And is there a preferred form to be used to list those people that they prefer not to review, to communicate that to us?
I think you should contact your program manager, would be the best way to do that. This list that you're submitting is it used to be that it was included with the biosketch and the reviewers would see it. This list no longer goes to reviewers, but even still, it's not really, the format doesn't really permit that kind of statement that, and so if, some people submit everyone they've ever worked with. And so the program manager has to decide, well, there's no one that they haven't had any contact in 4 years, it's okay to use them. And so we might submit it to the wrong person in that way. So it's best to just a private communication to the program manager to handle that. And you don't need to explain in detail necessarily what is going on, but that one person you don't simply think would not be appropriate as a reviewer.
Exactly. So we're near the last few minutes of this webinar. If there's any one or two more questions, please feel free to type in the Q&A pod, and then we'll be happy to answer those. Can I ask, will there be a frequently asked question page? I think the discussion we've had is to try to get something uploaded.
Yeah, that's going to take a little longer, but we will have the the recording and the slides available as soon as possible, and then we'll try to get the FAQ up as early in November as possible if we can't get it out before then.
I don't see anything yet, but one more just came in. Will we receive notification when the recording is posted? That's a very good question.
That's a good question. I know that SC has the list of registered people who registered for this. I think just as you got an email, telling you to log in today, I think we can send an email announcing that. I don't know if that's standard procedure, but we can ask that take place.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, this will get posted sometime around next week. That's the plan on the website. Any other questions in the last 3 to 4 minutes? Here, we just got one. So how will the renewal decision schedule work for grants that end March 31? Will bridge grants be provided?
No, it's logistically impossible for us to provide bridge grants on that time frame. So that's why we will try to give, if we have our appropriation and we know what we're going to be able to fund, we will try to get responses out as quickly after the review panels as possible. If the funding will be delayed, and you may need to talk to your university, but if with a decision in hand, then you're in a stronger position to ask the university for assistance if needed.
And I could just add that we have in the past, please contact your program manager or grant monitor, and we could work with you to try to, even if you need a no-cost extension, we've done that.
Yeah.
So near that time frame, you could ask, discuss with that option with us. Any final thoughts from any of the panelists here before we close? If not, I want to thank you again from all of us here at DOE Office of High Energy Physics for joining today's webinar. Like we said a couple of times, that we will be posting this recording to the website later next week. If you do have any follow-up questions, we just got one question.
No, just a thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so if you do have any questions, I could please, there is a email address that you could post. I will drop it in the chat here. That's the sc.hepfoa@science.doe.gov, and we'll be able to answer any questions from that site in that sense. And like Bill said, we are working to try to get a frequently asked question FAQ out on our website that's next to the FOA to try to get some common questions that come in and answered.
Right, and this email address is in the FOA, so look in the HEP section, and I believe you'll find a pointer to that.
Good.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Talk soon.